Good morning, everyone. My name is Auditor. I'm the Secretary of the Residence Trust.
Good morning. My name is the Association.
Fatima is my name. I'm from Board. I'm representing Second Council of the Association Zimbabwe. And good morning.
I'm my name. I'm the next project. Good morning, everyone. Apart from my Jacob from yet. My name is Dr. from Friends Business Body.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, everyone. My name is ZIMCODD. I'm social and economic. Good morning, everyone. My name is African. I'm a social and economic person.
Good morning, my name is Barbara. I gave a Zimbabwe Trust.
Hello, everyone. My name is Auditor.
Everyone. My name is Morning, everyone. My name is Becca. I'm one of the Zimbabwe Women in 2020.
Morning, everyone is
Good morning. Morning, everyone. My name is Mao Bajwanea.
Thank you. I think now we know that. So it's schedule. For now, I call upon Jeanette Shaw, the Executive Director for Zimbabwe Coalition on Data Development, to give us a welcome remarks and objectives. Janet, over to you. She's joining online. Janet, you have. Hello, Janet. Hello, Janet. Can you hear us now? Hello, can you hear us now? Online participants, can you please confirm if you are hearing us?
I could hear you. I need to confirm if you can hear me now. Can you hear me now?
Hello, Janet. Dorothy.
Hello. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Shikoya? I can hear you. I can go ahead now. Can you hear me? Dorothy, you still can you hear me?
Online participants, are you hearing us now? Okay, Janet confirmed that she's now online. So, Janet, can you please Thank you. Thank you.
May I come in now? Komorero, could I continue?
Okay, we can what allowed to come in when the sound is recorded. You come in and share with us remarks. So while we are waiting for that, let's move on with the program. I'm calling upon Kasir Banda and come give us set the context for us. What is the content of this report we are discussing today? So, Kasir Banda, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning once again. The light, yes. Too much. No. It's blinding. I'm trying to get an angle where yeah, now I'm struggling. Now it's there, but okay. And now. I don't know how it works, but on its own, it will not dangerous for someone. That's normal. Sorry, I will tell you. Good morning, in charge of but I'm here to just show why things why so basically my starting point is you would expect that in what scenario should be like a health list. It is supposed to ask whether we are in a financial situation or whether we should be in a motivation, whether we are talking about separation is now going to go monetary, whether we are talking about somebody who is an outpatient, or whether we are talking about someone who is then be changed but here I was just theory. Why value of public. So the number one comes from that we are citizens. We are also so from that perspective, it means that and when you are dealing with you need So basically, and we take the agent we see and transfer to be able to
Morning. My name is Auditor. I am from the Zimbabwe Congress of Churches.
So that is one of the things which also
Morning, I believe in the
public plan for
the
see the social play. The relationship goes
Good morning. My name is Richard.
the other issue that is also important to not about the signaling effect from a theoretical perspective. There are information aspects between the government and the public. So the explainability was that there is a lot of suspicion that nowadays everything being shared online in which not yet evidence in terms of where we understand our society. But when the report comes, we expect the general also to send the right signals in terms of what kind of information that we can see in the end to account the government. You can also see is the extent to which the management control over the resources. And I'm sure you are doing active in terms of journalism, finding in the way you can also see that from that perspective if there is management control. I hope you understand that I'm trying to give this context because a lot can also show that someone is completely lost control of how the resources are being managed. You are also looking at you would expect general to be they go two sides of the same point. They go end to end. So they match benchmark. You know what values so when you are looking at those bodies, you can also know what we have good governance in Zimbabwe. This is theory that you can speak assurance or you can say assurance. Basically, when you go to the bodies, we want to check the resources that we manage. There is room for us to improve. So as you go to the body, so let us take some of malfeasance, look at that happening, and see something that can make us remove such kind of because that's what we are interested in. Then the last theory, more or less hypothesis, still develop, but that's about information. When we get this body reports, what confidence value in terms of information, these are related. Because information is already shared and we're interacting with that on day-to-day basis. But we wait until every end of the year, be able to get what transpires. So as I try to wrap up, I want to give a open statement that basically you can equate it to a check from a doctor whether the patient is contented outpatient or whether you can be admitted or whether unit or whether you are not about prescribed for what is the more motion. So these are things that we take note. And I've just shared with you three theories just to help us to interpret for the reflection. And the last thing that I want to emphasize was most important one is the agency, which is social contract. The trust part about the account transparency and prudent. This is also guide institutional principles of management. I guess I've exhausted my time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucas, for sharing your setting the tone for us, showing us that we are here for discussion on serious document which we have a view of what is happening. I've met government, local authorities, state-owned enterprises, to see if the social contract is at play in Mukasi's work, as well as the effects. So thank you so much. Now we move on to the main presentation. Before I move, Janet, can you hear us now? So Janet, can you hear us? Can you now go ahead with your opening remarks?
So whatever space it is
Okay, so we'll come back to you. So let's move on to the main presentation according to our program, where we really want to see for some of us who are yet to read some of those documents, voluminous documents. We really want to find out some key motives from those reports. These reports are covered local authorities, state-owned enterprises, and parastatals, appropriation account, and fund account. So, giving us that presentation of key findings, is the Office of the Auditor General. Is Faith now in from the OAG office?
so the reduction is the 2014 the level of stigma was 5. So it was made to 5 to 5. How well are we doing? So if 2022 finds shade, that's the result. Tell us what is what the education time coach. The more I get plan to what has been let's get through what we want to very machine. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, sorry, they were correcting the technicalities. So Janet is now on, so that we move on to the next presentation after. Janet, you can now shoot.
Hi, Jiko, confirm that you can hear me. May you kindly confirm that you can hear me, Jiko Borero?
Okay, so continuing facing these technicalities. So we move on to the final presentation around the audit findings. So page is not yet in. So we can continue with the main presentation around the key audit findings. So I'm going to take you through, but when our Faith comes in, she'll be part of the panel. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so whilst we are waiting for the OAG, you know, these days traffic issues. Okay, so let me go through these key audit findings. You know, maybe just as for background, the supporting legislation will support the work of the Auditor General, the Constitution of Zimbabwe, the Public Finance Management Act, the Audit Office Act, and the Public Accountants and Auditors Act. Sam, can you sit next to the laptop? So, what is really the mandate of the Office of the Auditor General? The OAG exists, the Auditor General exists to audit the accounts, financial statements, and financial management of all departments, institutions, and agencies of government, all provincial and metropolitan councils, and all local authorities. They also, at the request of the central of the government, the Auditor General can carry out some special audits of the accounts of any statutory body or government controlled entity. Also, another constitutionally mandated mandate is to carry out audits to ensure that the receipt and disbursement of public funds have been made under proper authority. As we are going to see, there is mismanagement around the use of public resources, including public assets. Then also the Auditor General is mandated to carry out value for money audits, which entail examining the economy, efficiency, and effectiveness with which those entrusted with financial and material resources have utilized them. Next slide. So, what is really the value of this OAG report in public financial management? Number one, they ensure that we have fiscal discipline in government, where we are talking about revenue generation versus expenditures. So that we are saying the government must always stick within its means. So if you are following the books, you know that the government will not spend beyond what it is able to generate. So this is very, very critical, particularly in debt management, because as Zimbabwe is really struggling with debt distress, where we are spending well above what we are capable. So the OAG reports are there to highlight to us if there is fiscal indiscipline in government. Then we have also allocative efficiency. They are talking about allocation of resources. You know that according to the Constitution, everyone must benefit from the public resources, rich or poor. so the OAG report is there to ensure that do we really have allocated efficiency in government, the manner at which we are allocating public resources. Then operational efficiency, where we are looking at the value for money for citizens on issues such as procurement. That in all procurement systems, all procurement being done across all levels of government, are the citizens really getting any value for their dollar? Because we are saying any money spent by the government is taxpayers' money. Then transparency and accountability. This is another key role of these auditor reports to ensure that we have access to information as citizens, and we are creating space for social accountability like participatory budgeting. Then this was just a context to see we are discussing these audit reports, but we are saying the 2023 financial year, what has been the context, the macroeconomic environment surrounding us, so that we appreciate what is really happening in terms of resource mismanagement. So in 2023, of course, we had our harmonized general elections. There was also issues around public resource leakages, corruption cases, tax evasion, illicit financial flows like smuggling of key critical minerals. We also witnesses tax increases. You know, the 2023 budget, it's tax increases. And also, we witnessed unsustainable tax expenditures. If you look on the ZIMCODD reports, they are indicating how much its government is losing through these tax expenditures. By tax expenditures, you just mean your tax incentives which are provided by government to help various sectors of the economy and the people and the general citizens. Then we have also issues around debt and sustainability. We are saying our debt as a nation is in distress. We are now struggling to repay our debts, and as shown by arrears and penalties, which are now at least 50% of our total external debt. So it shows that in Zimbabwe, we are really facing challenges in terms of trying to address our finances. Then we have issues to do with volatile currency, acute price fluctuations, witness what happened with our ZIM dollar in 2023, and then the resultant effect on general prices. Then also poor service delivery, healthcare, costs are rising, housing, water, education, etc. Then weak social safety nets, as we are going to see that even where there are resources which have been set aside, some ministries failed to utilize those funds which were meant for social safety nets. Then we have exogenous shocks. Talk about geopolitical risk emanating from what's happening in Europe, Russia, Ukraine. Some climatic shocks which we are experiencing, El Nino-induced drought, etc. So this is generally the context which we have been operating as a nation. Now we move on to the key findings, the gist of our discussion today. We start with local authorities, LAs. The Auditor General established that almost all local authorities have limited IPSAS knowledge, international public standard accounts knowledge. Also, he found that only 19 out of 92 local authorities had updated financials as of December 2023. They're saying only 19 local authorities out of 92 had up-to-date financials as of end of December 2023. Again, 60% of the Auditor General's opinions were adverse for local authorities. Only 2 clean opinions. By adverse opinion, we mean that the Auditor General found no evidence to actually rule out misstatement of financial statements. So it shows that there's a lot of growth happening in our local authorities. If more than half of our local authorities, their financial statements are being rated as adverse by the Auditor General. Also, the Auditor General found that of the 533 audit findings, in 2022, only 71.29% were unaddressed. It means like almost all findings are yet to be addressed. So we have the local authorities. They will actually help us to dissect these issues. Also, the Auditor General established that many of local authorities are diverting devolution funds from their intended use. Government is setting, central government set aside 5% of the government budget, annual budget, earmarked for devolution funds. But many local authorities are diverting those devolution funds from their intended use. Then also what was key is that of all the audit findings, governance irregularities topped the chart. They were up nearly 40% from 139 issues that were reported in 2022 to 190 in 2023. So it shows by governance, these are some of the issues you are talking about: weak internal controls in our local authorities, over issues around inventory and cash management, absence of bank reconciliations, unsupported adjustments, and incomplete records. So it shows that, okay, thank you. Then also continuing with the local authorities, there are accountability gaps due to late submission of financial statements. Local authorities are not submitting their financial statements for auditing well on time, according to the audit office. They are also lagging behind in terms of embracing technology, where most processes were still manual or partially automated. So it means that in as much as we are saying in the fourth industrial revolution, technology advancement, but we are saying our local authorities are being left behind. They are still using manual processes up to this day. Then 81 of the findings covered issues around revenue collection and debt recovery, where there is non-billing of revenue, where if you read the report, it is where some local authorities are just using estimates, when billing their customers. The issues are unresolved balances and incomplete receivables. And also 21 issues covered issues to do with procurement of goods and services, where there is unsupported expenditures, according to the Auditor General. And then 25 issues were around asset management, where there's a lack of asset registers, lack of asset revaluation to make sure that they understand the real value of public assets. Useful life of some fixed assets has not been constantly reviewed, according to the audit office. Then also service delivery is still an issue, where the Auditor General reported various cases of water, weak sewage infrastructure, poor waste management among local authorities. And then finally, employment issues, where there are unsupported salary arrears, unauthorized allowances and benefits, where council bodies are giving themselves huge packs, but not actually delivering for the citizens, according to the audit office. Then we move on to the state-owned enterprises and parastatals. According to these audit reports, about 191 financial statements were audited, and of the audit opinions, 57 were rated as clean. So if you are comparing with local authorities, you can see that at least state-owned enterprises are performing well in terms of their financials, because 57 at least had a clean audit report, where the Auditor General was satisfied that yes, I don't have any evidence of a serious misstatement of financial statements. Then 11 issued a disclaimer, where by disclaimer, the Auditor General was not sure to rule out completely, to say there was no evidence because of issues to do with lack of responses from the management in these state-owned enterprises. Then Of the 388 recommendations which were reported for state-owned enterprises, only 34% were fully addressed. Then 46% were not. So it's something which, both from the local authorities, state-owned enterprises, they are not following the audit recommendations. But one of the reasons why the audit office exists is to help us claim on leakages in government. But we are seeing that state-owned enterprises are very reluctant in addressing the key issues which are being covered. And of those key issues, I can see again that governance issues continue to top the charts. Governance issues which mainly covers issues to do with your internal controls. Then revenue and collection, debt recovery, where the state-owned enterprise and parastatals are not actually addressing issues to do with their outstanding debts. Management of assets is also on number 3, where this shows that there's abuse, serious abuse of public assets by management in state-owned enterprises and parastatals. Then service delivery, of course, and then employment issues. Next slide. Right. Then on other governance issues, these are just key issues which were highlighted in these reports. Number 1 is to do with unsupported expenditures. And it's also the problem with local authorities as well, where goods are being procured without supporting documents. There's also non-alignment of accounting policies and processes with reporting framework. You know, there's a reason why there are those accounting standards. But we see that local authorities, even state-owned enterprises, they are still reluctant in moving along with evolving standards so that we improve the state of our finances, public finances. Then outdated accounting manuals. As I highlighted earlier, you know, issues to do with technology, also with local authorities, that they are still using those manual processes, and they are not adopting quickly technology. Then non-compliance with tax laws and regulations. We expect, you know, state-owned enterprises and parastatals, they are government entities, and you would expect them to obey the tax laws and regulations of the land. But the audit findings are that there's serious non-compliance with tax laws and regulations by state-owned enterprises. And mostly, this non-compliance is around issues where they are giving themselves some perks while evading taxes. Non-performance of bank reconciliations and absence of internal audit arrangements. Internal audit offices in the state-owned enterprises are very weak. In some instances, there's also no internal audit at all. Yet internal audit is a very, very critical office for any organization. Then revenue collection and debt recovery. You know, there were 31 issues, mainly covering revenue leakages, long outstanding debts. You know, we are struggling with the debt as a nation, and this is one of the reasons why over the years we have been experiencing debt assumptions in the past. And this is being shown in audit reports that state-owned enterprises, they are burdened with the debt, and there's also they are facing issues in trying to address that debt, where their debt recovery systems are very weak. Then there are also issues around, this is very, very critical. There's 26 entities have going concern issues. Of all the state-owned enterprises and parastatals which were covered in this report, about 26 of them have going concern issues. By that, we are talking about the existence in the future for a company. How much revenues are you generating so that you can sustain operations? So 26 of the Auditor General highlighted that 26 of these companies are in jeopardy because they are facing continued operating losses, undercapitalization, and liquidity challenges. And you can also link these issues around liquidity challenges to our current changeovers over these years as one of the contributing factors as well. Next slide. Then finally, to do with assets and inventory management, where the audit report for state-owned enterprises has highlighted that there were 22 issues around asset and inventory management, and this is relating to asset record keeping, where in some instances some assets are registered in the names of individuals instead of being registered in the names of their public entities. There's lack of due diligence in placing investments, where analysis has shown, audit analysis has shown that most of the times these companies are not doing very well when they are planning their investments, and this is largely due to lack of investment policies, where most of these entities don't have viable investment policies. Then also issues around maintenance of assets, where top management and officials are actually misusing some of the public assets. It's there in the audit report. Then finally, around SOEs is to do with procurement of goods and services. And this is a recurring issue over all local authorities, SOEs, and appropriation accounts. Then for SOEs, the Auditor General found out that the reports actually increased to 33 issues from the 20 that were recorded in the previous year, and are mainly covering issues of non-delivery of goods and services, where in most instances the motor vehicles have been procured, all payments done, but in terms of delivery, we see that 2-3 years later there was no delivery of such vehicles. That's an issue which is actually bedeviling us. Because you know what, in most instant countries, these state-owned enterprises are very, very critical in terms of contribution to GDP. Let's take, for instance, China. China, these SOEs contribute about 40% of their GDP, and China is a 16 trillion economy. So it shows us that state-owned enterprises in Zimbabwe are actually failing us as a country. Then issues to do with the non-declaration of interest during procurement evaluation, where those who are in the procurement value chain are related with those they are extending the services to, but they don't declare that they are compromised. Then insufficient documentation, where in most cases there were no supporting documents to support that these goods were actually delivered. Next slide. Now we move on to the appropriations accounts, which is the third and final report. According to the Auditor General, up to 35 ministries and commissions managed to submit their IPSAS implementation matrix and action plans, IMAPs, for audit review, while 5 did not submit. As you know that the government is trying to move to the accruals accounting from the cash basis, but we are still lagging, because you look there, out of 35 ministries, 30 submitted for the audit review, 5 did not. But what's critical is the second point: none of the ministries and commissions had implemented the 2023 planned activities due to the absence of relevant actionable plans. This shows that this has actually affected us in terms of service delivery, economic growth, sustainable development, etc. Then of the total stations, I know of the 4,330 outstations which the Auditor General must audit annually, I managed to visit only 196 provincial and district offices, compared to 300 in 22. And according to the Auditor General, the main reason was issues to do with shortages of funds from the government, so to support the audit function. Then overall, out of 80 financial statements which were audited, you can see the difference. That's saying we have 4,330 outstations, only 196 were covered. And then we have see that out of 80 financial statements which were audited, 49 had clean opinions, audit opinions, 34 had qualified opinions, and then 6%. But for comparison purposes, you can see that they are doing also well compared to local authorities. Local authorities are actually lagging behind. Their statements have been rated by 60% of them, by the way. Next slide. So this is just the summary of the audit findings around the appropriations, where, as you can see, the governance issues are always top of the charts. Governance issues, which means that there's weak internal controls in ministries, departments, and agencies of government. Followed by issues to do with procurement, asset management, etc. Next slide. So this appropriations account shows budgetary utilization and control. How much has been disbursed, how much has been utilized. So according to the audit report we are discussing today, in 2023, the unallocated reserve transfers more than doubled the initial votes by 241% for 23 ministries. 241%. There was no evidence that the Treasury sought prior approval from Parliament to incur additional expenditure as required by Section 307 of the Constitution. So it shows that in as much, but to me, this is highly linked to, as I highlighted earlier, issues to do with how our economy performed in 2023, the exchange rate, etc., where the value of the budget was wiped by inflation and exchange rate depreciation. But we are saying this is not a license to say if there's inflation, if there's exchange rate deterioration, the ministry should not seek for approval from Parliament. All funds spent by the government must be authorized by the Parliament. So, in as much as that Treasury can say, no, we witnessed increased volatility of the exchange rate, which affected disbursement, but we are saying every disbursement, even that 241% was supposed to be approved by Parliament. So it's an issue there, it's a red flag. Then also in terms of direct payments, Treasury paid 34 billion, and then the real value in US dollar then was 277 million directly to suppliers on behalf of ministries. But they were not being processed through the PFM system. According to the Treasury instructions, all payments must go through the PFM, Public Finance Management system, so that we can monitor how they are being disbursed and being accountable to how they were used. But the Treasury was just paying directly. So there was now inconsistencies where what is the Treasury is reporting and what the line ministries are reporting. So it becomes now a very challenging task for Parliament to actually exercise their main role of oversight and monitoring. Then in terms of area payments, there were 27 ministries with area payments totaling 2.9 trillion and 577 million United States dollars, half a billion. There's no evidence that ministries reported to Treasury their outstanding payments to enable funding arrangements. So you see how our debt keeps growing. That is how we are continuing to struggle with the debt distress as the nation, because these line ministries are failing to account, or to report to Treasury to say these are the outstanding areas we are having, so that at least it can inform the Treasury when making disbursements in the next disbursement period. Next slide. Also issues in the ministries, there are also honorables, there are also issues around unsupported expenditures, just like local authorities and state-owned enterprises. For instance, there's this figure that 967 billion Zimbabwean dollars and 10 million United States dollars were spent by 13 ministries, commissions without adequate supporting documents. We are talking about 967 billion. Boom. It was spent without any supporting document to say this what has happened to this. No receipts, no voucher, no what. Then there's to do with underutilization of funds, where there was 10.3 billion that was allocated for projects to promote well-being and protection of vulnerable groups, where there are issues to do with older persons, the BEAM, Basic Education Assistance module. There also are funds set aside for kids in the streets. But this 10.3, the funds were not utilized. We are talking about rising inflation, tightening macroeconomic conditions, and there are resources which were set aside by Treasury to actually support the vulnerable. But you see now, these funds were not utilized. Why? There were no effective mechanism to identify beneficiaries. So it shows that we have a lot of work to do in public institutions. Then procurement of motor vehicles and other assets. Yes, the government procured several vehicles through different suppliers. However, the tender documents, procurement contracts, all these supporting documents, invoices, payment vouchers, delivered notes, issue vouchers, in most cases, they were not available for audit. Also, in some instances, the suppliers missed the delivered dates, breached the contracts by not delivering the agreed number of vehicles, and varied the approved model of motor vehicles. So it shows that this is also another very critical honorables where local authorities, state-owned enterprises, they are spending a lot on motor vehicles instead of focusing or redirecting those resources towards safe delivery so that at least the ratepayers can have street lighting, can have quality water, good waste management, etc. Next slide. So yeah, I left this recommendation so that we discuss after the panel so that we see how we can try to address these anomalies. Thank you so much. So these were the reports, honorable stakeholders here from the audit reports, both covering local authorities, state-owned enterprises, and appropriations account for ministries, departments, and agencies. And we've seen a lot of fraud which is happening in these entities. So for now, to discuss the implications of these findings on things to do like safe delivery, sustainable development, economic growth, inclusive growth, etc. We are going to have a panel discussion led by UCAS, Urban Councils, and Association of Rural District Councils. You can come forward and take a seat. Then we also want to hear how these findings are affecting the youth. Youth are the majority, 60%. What are the implications of all these findings to the youth? So we are represented by Yet, Tafato from Yet. You can come up front and take your seat. Then we talked about issues where sometimes there's 10.3 billion which was never spent due to lack of registers or that. So to discuss these issues, we have Jeff Zimbabwe Trust to come and show us how these are affecting particularly people with disabilities. Then also the women's issues, women depends the most on public services. So we want to hear how these are actually affecting women's issues. So led by Zvirisny, Esther from Zvirisny. Then also residents, residents that takes taxpayers. So what we hear, how all these irregularities in local authorities are affecting. So Accra will represent us. Can we have additional? So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'll start with UCAS urban councils. We have seen what has happened or what has been reported. Is there a representative for UCAS? Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. We want you, ma'am, to show us the implications of, we have seen what is happening in local authorities and as the representatives of urban councils of Zimbabwe. What do you think are some of the implications of these audit findings? Thank you. I give you 5 minutes.
Thank you. Once again, good morning, honorables, and good morning, everybody. It is very difficult to be the one who is starting after your institutions have been butchered left and right, center, and all around. But I want to say that it is true and correct for most of the findings, though of course the language which was being used by the presenter is a bit harsh. But I want to say that as local authorities, also sometimes the way it is put across, it really sounds like there are no systems at all, or it is just one local authority which is then painted by the same black brush for all the local authorities. I really want to say, yes, we have adopted IPSAS. And for me, I see a positivity in local authorities and the fact that we are actually ahead of the local of the central government in terms of implementing IPSAS. We are ahead. Most of the local authorities are already implementing IPSAS. The challenge is that IPSAS says if you don't implement one, you have not implemented all of them. And the most difficult IPSAS for local authorities is IPSAS 17, which is now IPSAS number 45. That is the assets valuation. It is not as simple as it sounds. People think when we are talking assets valuation is just putting a price tag on an asset. But IPSAS is not like that. When you are valuing assets for IPSAS, a road, you have to put the value of the land separately, the value of the improvements on that road separately. A skill which even as a country we do not have. And also asset evaluation has proved to be very expensive for most local authorities. And hence, you find that those who have gone ahead and done asset evaluation is just small local authorities, maybe like where I come from. But most big local authorities, this is really expensive in terms of valuing of their dams, valuing of their snake parks, valuing of it is complicated. It's not as simple as it sounds. Hence, it is it will sound very easy to just say they are not IPSAS compliant. But when this government adopted IPSAS, I think IPSAS is a process, and there was also need to put a machinery of how this will be achieved. It is where we are talking of the IMAPs which have been approved. But those IMAPs, we also found that there was change into leadership. We had councillors, we had appreciated whom we had taken through these IPSAS. And then change came in. You now have new leadership even the political party, which is not even appreciating what is this IPSAS, what is the importance of these IMEPs, why must it be given more funding, and hence it remains a challenge. But I also want to say for an issue of documentation, which was being said, sometimes the challenge we face is multiple reporting. You look at devolution funds, you report at the local level, you report at OPC local, OPC provincial, OPC Kumsoro. So those documents, to tell you the truth, there is no official who can just sign for money to go out without any document. Everyone knows that before you sign for any amount to go out, there must be an invoice, there must be an order, there must be a voucher. And a voucher is not signed by 2 people, a voucher is signed by 5 or so people in a local authority. So those vouchers will be there. But the internal audit will come, ask for the same vouchers, they go, they come back. The ministry officers will come, they ask for the same vouchers, they go. The OPC, this and that. So that by the time the OG's office comes, maybe those documents are now missing. It was just written without. But yet those documents initially were there when the payments were done. And then also, in terms of vehicles not being delivered, yes, we suffered this when we pay local suppliers who sound to be reputable, big names, which when I say you all think they are reputable, and these vehicles are not coming. But we're also saying these suppliers, they are registered with PRAS. Why can't the government or PRAS assist us to blacklist them? Why should supplier A go and cheat local authority A, local authority B, local authority C? Why can't they be blacklisted so that they don't continue to be competing for these tenders when they don't then supply even the government itself? Then my final point is, you have just seen where it was said that the ministry, there are 2 points. The one on devolution funds, where you are saying we are using the funds for wrong things. I want to correct that notion. Devolution funds are supposed to be capex funds. But what comes is a pittance. It is just a trickle. I'll give an example of my local authority. What I was given in another quarter or almost for half year, it was $400 in the guy change. So what capital project do I do with $400? I've been on record to say, no, take that pikirere, no check up and say this is your capex. So you then say it was used for wrong things because that money is just recurrent money. It cannot fund capital. When we've been on record to say, why don't you give 3, 4 local authorities and they do something meaningful? And the next quarter you give others, and the next quarter you give others. That to just say we have given local authorities giving us meaningless sums which can't do any capex. Then you will say devolution funds was misused or abused. That is not correct. The money is not enough for anything. It's either you can leave it in the account, and also when you leave it in the account, given our current issues, it loses value and you do not still buy anything. And then my last point was, you have just heard when you said 23 or 241% or 23 trillion was not given to the relevant ministries. We are part of those ministries. Our money for SNAP is not coming. Our money for these devolution funds, we've been saying, why don't we know that the 5% yacho tombo iwona, and we have no way of measuring. Have we been given that 5% in totality? It does not come. Even when we go for budget, we're given figures, which we go and tell the public that this year our devolution fund, maybe in case of local authority X, it is 70 billion. But for the whole year, ever since I've existed in local authorities, Kuvapakatanga devolution fund, I've never received more than 10% of that fund. All I receive is the noise that you are not using it correctly. But have I even been given 50% of what I was promised? Why tell us? You make us lie to the public, because we go to the public and say this year we are going to do projects of this magnitude using devolution funds. Yet those funds, they'll never come. If I also don't account for it in my budget. My budget will not be approved. They say you have not put the devolution fund, the figure we gave you, but that figure remains a figure on paper which never comes. Thank you.
Thank you. So rural councils, I want you to respond since the urban council, we had the submissions from the urban councils. What do you have to say in terms of what the Auditor General has covered for rural district councils? Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Sure.
The Auditor General's remarks, I would want to take away anything from them because it is indeed what is happening. We have our own take-home points as the Rural District Councils Association, where we are going to amend, we are going to work on and improve on what was written, what was noted by the Auditor General. First of all, the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission have implemented through their monitoring and evaluation department a process whereby we report to them on the implementation of the prior year audit issues. And I'm sure by doing so, we will address all the audit recommendations and improve the governance in the rural district councils. The other issue is I want to highlight is on the hazy operating environment that is characterized that characterizes all the rural local authorities. Today, we are running with what do I call them? Bylaws. Tomorrow, elections come. The trust is no longer on bylaws. The bylaws have been funded, but we haven't gotten like the value for those bylaws, and already the trust has changed because the minister has changed. So if the operating environment for local authorities can improve, and people know that we are targeting this, we are going to run with this so that at least we improve on the governance of the local authorities, then we will definitely address most of the things that have been raised by the Auditor General. Because if we look at the bylaws that we were running with in the past 5 years, the bylaws were streamlined to address almost all the issues that are being raised by the Auditor General's office. So if we can have maybe a clear operating environment for the councils, then the other issue is the external audit recommendation. I wouldn't want to say that the auditors are qualified, are not qualified, no. But I believe some of these auditors have limited perspective on the operations of the local authorities of the public sector, because we are being audited by the auditors who are private sector trained. Look at the auditors. We don't have any auditors who are public sector trained. Maybe if we can move back to the prior years where we used to be audited by UTCO. I wouldn't want, it wouldn't be fair for local authorities' reports to be compared with the public sector or audit reports, saying they have a clean report better than the local authorities. It is because if you look at the basis for qualifications, most of the areas is based on IFRS 9, which is the effect of exchange rate. Whereby when the Auditor General audits the public sector, the effect is still the same, but it's not being cascaded because they understand the operating environment of the public sector. So if that can be addressed as well, I'm sure the picture of the local authorities can be heard well. The other issue is on the formation of the integrity committees. Maybe if these commissions that are formed, they push through the integrity committees in the local authorities, like they have started, and maybe it is being monitored and evaluated, it will actually improve the governance in the local authorities. Then finally, I would want to say that not all local authorities are spending money on salaries, on pegs, and motor vehicles. Because if you look at the same report, it also reports that local authorities are engulfed by a lot of salary arrears. Why are there salary arrears? Would anyone want to work for no salary? Definitely not. But it's just that there are limited resources, and also there is limitation of scope in the auditor who is performing the audit work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now, Esther, you've heard and read the audit reports. So many issues discussed. What's your take in terms of the implications on women of all these issues which have been discussed and reported by the Auditor General? I have maybe 5 minutes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good morning to you once more. I think as we have heard from the findings, there are many issues that are really worrisome, especially around the issues to do with our governance in the different spaces in the three reports that were presented, and also especially to do with how some of the funds were not accounted for, as well as some of the risks that were coming out from the findings from the report. And indirectly, it really affects us as citizens, yes, and particularly women, in the sense that, for example, as our colleagues were speaking from the councils, they indicated that in as much as they have challenges mainly around the resources, and the audit report has presented their own side in terms of their findings, it affects at the end of the day the citizen, the service delivery, the water that is needed, the sewage that needs to be made, the access to health. At the end of the day, if these finances are not trickled down to the public, to the citizen, and especially to vulnerable groups, which include the women, they will not be able to access these services. So, in as much as we're talking about it at the level of public accounting and audit findings, we know that these resources are public resources that need to then benefit the people at the end of the day. My contribution really then is we really need to look at our legal framework really around what really happens. What is the enforcement measures or penalties around such, especially the worrying findings around resource allocations that are not accounted for. I think you indicated that there were some findings that were completely not even implemented from 2023 to date. And what is done about that? But if people generally, even at schools level, if they know that nothing is going to be done, it's going to be a continued talk and discussion. So it really goes back to our legal framework and our enforcement measures around these findings, so that at the end of the day, these resources are directed where they're supposed to go, to the people and to the social safety needs that are needed. And the other issue I wanted to indicate was around the utilized funds that you're talking about, and the finding being that the reason was there was no mechanism to identify beneficiaries. I think that's really also worrisome, because considering where we are as an economy and the vulnerable groups, it would be important to actually indicate if there are no measures to be able to identify the people that are vulnerable within our communities, and that those resources being utilized for the betterment of those vulnerable groups. Because we know right now, even as we are looking at the El Nino drought that we are going to be facing, and then we say that they are unutilized funds because there are no beneficiaries. That had happened last year. Then what are we saying in terms of the people that we have in our communities and we have in our country? So at the end of the day, my conclusion is that we really need to look at what are we going to do about these findings? What are the penalties and enforcement measures, so that we know that resources go to the right people. At the end of the day, resources benefit the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Esther. Now we move on to Chafadzwa to give your views around what we had today, this morning, and what you have read also from the audit reports, how they are going to, the implications on youth. Over to you, Tafadwa. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I think the overall view is that the findings in the reports review that we are not moving in the right direction in terms of harnessing the demographic dividend that we have amongst young people. We always say that the youth are an asset, the youth are a valuable resource, but how the report has come out reveals that we might not be moving in the right direction of harnessing this resource. And I think the second issue I want to then highlight is that the young people are going to then continue suffering in terms of not being able to access opportunities. The NGS one has got targets on a yearly basis. For example, last year it was 126,000 young people need to access empowerment opportunities across the entire economy. This year it's 163,000 young people who need to access empowerment opportunities. But with the wastage that we're then seeing in the reports, the BEAM operational manual has not been reviewed since 2016. The Ministry of Youth only got 7 out of the 17 vehicles that were supposed to be delivered. It shows that the servicing that's supposed to take place for the young people is not then going to happen. So the targets within the NGS one are not going to be achieved because of the wastage that is there and because of these findings. The cars that are supposed to then go visit young people to offer them loans through Empower Bank and everything else are not available. And that means that the young people are then going to then suffer in their communities. And I think it's also very important to understand that young people are not a homogeneous group. We have a young person now who is finishing O-level, A-level. We have a 21-year-old who is just finished university or at a polytech. We have a 25-year-old who is thinking of starting a family now. A 30-year-old who is now thinking of procuring a residential stand somewhere that is not serviced, that is non-existent because of the certain issues that are there in the local authorities. So young people in that diversity are getting the short end of the stick clearly from the findings in the Auditor General report. But I think, as I conclude, I think the issue is we always accuse the young people of complaining, but for once they are not actually then going to complain. We're actually then going to say we are a resource that you can tap into. There are things that are coming out of the report there that asset registers that are not compiled. These are basics that young people who have just graduated, who are looking for experience, work experience, can be engaged on short-term contracts to be able to do on behalf of the local authorities. They are trained, they're fresh from school, they know how to do these things, and to make sure that some of the recurring issues within the Auditor General report are addressed. Why not tap into these young people that are available, that are hunting for just a bit of work experience, and short-term contracts can be done. We've seen this happen elsewhere where young people are utilized by government agencies in other countries to then actually close the gap that is there in terms of capacity and energy to get things done. We saw that in the Auditor General report as well. There are issues around management not following up on grants and funds from youth interact centers where loans were not recovered from the young people. There are young people out there that have got bright ideas in terms of how these things can then be improved, how loans can be brought back in, and how this empowerment program that we then have can be more effective. So I think the issue is let our stakeholders, our local authorities, tap into the young people who are the resource that they can utilize to cover some of these gaps that have been noticed here. And I think it's very important for us to then be able to commit the issue that you see recurring issues each and every year. The implication is that the young people are not going to trust you because they're seeing that the commitment that you're supposed to then have is not there. So now you actually then hear young people saying, now, we're not surprised. This is how you guys behave. Which is very sad considering that we want to tell these young people to become taxpayers, to be honest people. But if they're seeing the issues that are within these reports here, their trust of us as adults, as their leaders, is eroded. And when you then have a generation of young people who do not trust their leaders, we have serious issues that we need to address. So I think this should be a wake-up call to this finding in the reports that let's tap into these young people, let's engage them, and wherever we can, explain the issues, the challenges that are there, so that they are aware and then they don't then get negative perceptions with the misinformation that is on social media. Some of these issues, as they are happening in the local authority, let the local authorities also meet with the young people, let the government agencies meet with the young people to explain and to get them engaged so that they are also aware of what is happening, and then they are able to offer their recommendations so that we can move forward together as a country. Thank you.
Thank you, Tafadzwa. So we move on to DZT, Barbara. The youth issues, PWD issues. We have had, there's lack of mechanisms to identify the beneficiaries, but the money is there. What's your take?
Thank you very much, and thank you to the presenter who have spoken before me. One of the things that I noted in the report that we shared was the fact that they are very silent on disability. And one of the tenets that we need to adopt as a country when it comes to disability inclusion and inclusive development, if we are to achieve equality and do away with discrimination and stigma for persons with disabilities, we must be intentional. And so what this means for me as I read the report was that we lack the facets and the expertise for inclusive budgeting and expenditure. We are not planning for persons with disabilities. The resources allocated are not provided specifically or targeting persons with disabilities to remove barriers and ensure that persons with disabilities participate. So one of the observations that we made was that the report is very silent on disability provision and allocation of. What that means for persons with disabilities is increased vulnerability. Poor governance is a barrier to inclusion and full participation of persons with disabilities. When we are not accountable to persons with disabilities, it means that there are no resources that were allocated to directly impact persons with disabilities in our communities. And according to ZIMCODD, this is 9.2% of the population, which has not been provided for directly. At the times when we allocate resources and blanket them, I think Tafadzwa has spoken about the diversity amongst the youth. Persons with disabilities are equally as diverse. You are looking at diversity firstly by disability. They are disabilities that require constant health services. And when we have not met the necessary service delivery provision for persons with disabilities, it means that they are suffering together with their families. And we're looking at the diversity of disability by age. So you will find persons with disabilities among the youth, persons with disabilities on the older populations and older persons. And all these have different needs that have not been provided for by the expenditure as well as the budgeting within our local authorities. We're also seeing increased vulnerability of persons with disabilities. And vulnerability is more than just being poor. It is being vulnerable or being exposed to risk. It is being defenseless. It is being insecure. And so we're looking at a group of people that are insecure, that are defenseless, and that have no voice. And I think in conclusion, I will say that the one step that the local authorities need to do in order to ensure disability inclusion is to begin to set up structures for inclusion within, so that we are very specific, we are intentional, and we target persons with disabilities in our expenditure. And so the rest we have heard, the inability to locate beneficiaries is really not an excuse at all for not providing for the most vulnerable in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Lastly, we hear from the residents, the ratepayers. What your response to the audit reports?
Thank you so much. I think it's not shocking to see these figures because it's reflective on service delivered which we are seeing. So you can actually see the correlation between the leakages and what's really happening on the ground. In 2016, the city of Harare, to be specific, purchased the 15 refuse trucks for a company known as Master Investments, Masasa, and then also in that consignment there were also I would say skip trucks Unfortunately, single skip tracks were then delivered, and the local authority accepted the wrong delivery, and the 10 refuse trucks which were then purchased until now they have not yet been delivered. But what does that mean? So I've heard the parliamentarians and others that we need to privatize the waste collection. But when the Ministry of Local Government know that sit over and purchase 10 refuse trucks, 15 which were not delivered to the local authority, which also can have the potential to collect refuse. So these are some of the issues which we don't need to hide behind the finger. That the issues which are affecting us, they are these leakages. And who is mastered investments? Who are those people, the companies which we are talking about, which you talked about, state-owned enterprises, talked about the ministry. Who are those companies? Who are they? Who are the owners? I like the presentation from even Councils Association of Zimbabwe to say they need to be blacklisted. They don't need to do even any business with any government department. It's wrong. It's immoral that we continue to have companies that steal from the government and from the people. And then at the end of the day, they continue even to have bids come year in, year out, and then they do business with local authorities and the public institutions. Because public institutions, state enterprises, all these institutions, they provide public goods, which come to us, they also in form of human rights. And when public goods, which are supposed to be provided by these state enterprises, they are not provided, or when this such revenue leakage is okay, this is serious implications on residents. What does it mean? I think in Harare, those who live in Glenview, Comrade Danto is here. There's been a continued outbreak of cholera because the demolition fund which you're talking about, which is not being disbursed, Harare receives less than 20% of its total allocations per year. And we had to go to the courts to say, please, can you disburse the funds? And they live in the worst way. People started to then, what does it mean, comrades and friends, ladies and gentlemen? People in Glenview during the January, February, March, they were defecating in buckets, in plastics, and then they will go and drop in drains because their houses were full with roastware. These are the realities which people are living in communities. So again, I think what is very, very important is that when we speak about these issues, those people who are at the helm of government, the local authorities, I'm not trying also to exonerate the corruption in local authorities. Let me also be very, very clear. These people, they need to understand that they've got a mandate to be able then to take care of residents and especially provide services which can be able then to ensure that we are in a disease-free. Also, we have access to health delivery system. The issue of devolution, let me also go back to that. If you go on your internet, you see a clinic constructed by devolution fund. But these ones are saying that we have not received devolution. Who is then constructing those clinics? So those are some of the questions which we need to ask ourselves. So meaning that there's no implementation of devolution. The current devolution which is being implemented, ladies and gentlemen, it's not the devolution as provided for in the Constitution. Because the devolution which is provided for in the Constitution must give a level of autonomy to local authorities. So we give them $300 and then we take the 300 and we buy pens and we say, can you account? You actually see, you presented something on the treasury purchasing on behalf of even ministries. So centralization creates serious opportunities, not only for corruption, but also even these leakages which we are talking about. So again, we really need to fully implement devolution as provided for in the Constitution. I think that's the first point which I would say, because I have got 5 minutes. We need to implement devolution as provided for in the Constitution as a point, my departure point. And secondly, we need a clear revenue allocation formula within the disbursement of devolution funds. And this can also be able to go a long way in ensuring that we don't have these anomalies. But again, like from what she said, we really need to blacklist those companies. I wanted to say something. And the colleagues, I think we have colleagues now who are not in prison. We also heard that they are also linked to another biodigester in Bali, which they get a tender and they not construct. And people in Bali are living in West Go to Mbari, people are living in West. We've got a member of us who live near Seke Road, near Mbari, who died of cholera because at the doorstep, the local authority dump refuse there. And it's not collected. And by what is it? Why is it not collected? Because the refuse trucks we are supposed were not delivered. Because the guest house was going to deal with such waste was not what? Was not constructed. So we really need to then give life to this conversation. As I conclude, in my remarks, it's also as I said, level of autonomy must be given to the local authority. This year, the government allocated money to provincial and metropolitan councils. In the 2024 budget, it allocated money to metropolitan and provincial councils. But where are the provincial councillors? Where are they? We elected provincial councillors in August. Where are they? Are they sitting? But they've got an allocation. Yes. So we then come here next year, comrade, and we said, we have got an allocation which was given in 2024, and the Auditor General find out. We have found out this is clear. People were elected, they are not sitting, but they were allocated resources. What is going to happen? So those are some of the issues which we need to deal with. So the governance issues are not only stemming out from our local authorities. We really need, to embrace the Constitution. As I conclude, if you read Section 2 of the Constitution, it speaks to the supremacy of the Constitution, and we really need to then our local authorities, central government, our parastatals, to embrace the Constitution. We really need to embrace the constitutional culture where citizens participate, where transparency and accountability is the hallmark of our way of living. We really need to respect institutions such as Parliament. Some people are called by Parliament to come and present or account. They will not come. Who are they? We really need to start. So if you see a person, someone by Parliament who does not come, you saw there's a red flag there. And those are the issues which people don't want to talk about. And these are the real issues which we have been grappling with as a country, as local authorities, as people, and as residents. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we have heard the reactions from our panel. Now it's time for the plenary so that every one of us contributes in this discussion. So the roving mic, please, Mike. Ciao. So you can direct if it is the contribution or we want one of our panelists to respond. We have the urban councils and rural councils here and other CSOs who are working on these critical issues. Thank you. You can shoot, Nyasha.
Okay. My name is Yaton Nyasha from the Poverty Protection Forum Trust. I think my first remark goes to both the urban and the rural councils. I think you have remained closed in your spaces, that you are not open up to the public. You do not produce reports, financial reports that are accessible to the people. So, for instance, I can give an example that the Treasury has said it has disbursed a certain amount to local authorities through devolution funds. It is up to you to also report in your reports that you haven't received money maybe by June or by July in that year, so that people are not misled that you have received the money when you haven't received the money. And then the second remark, I would want to put it to parliamentarians in here. I would like to refer you to the ZIMCODD model law on public finance management, particularly section 52, which says that as PAC, you also have the role to demand or to penalize non-implementation of recommendations. So we have recurring issues that are coming out of that are noted by the Auditor General. And in our Constitution as well, if you go to section 309 of the Constitution, it also directs all public agencies and the departments to also comply with the recommendations of the Auditor General. So I think we also need to then amend the Audit Office Act to ensure that issues of penalties and offences are clearly articulated so that those principles of the Constitution in Section 309 are put into practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Nyasha. Then we can take first round of 5, then they respond, then we take another round.
Thank you very much, Doc. I think mine is a contribution. First of all, we need to salute what the acting Auditor General is doing. Year in, year out, they are managing to bring out a statement of audit. Those who say we are using harsh language when we condemn this, we don't salute. Then my contribution is to say to parliamentarians, paya pautinozosvika usiku tichidhibheta budget kuti mari dziende kunzvimbo dzakasiyana siyana. Dai taitawo kuti department raauditor general riwane mari so that they can do even field visits. Imagine dai wakaenda kuya kwauri kuti havana kuenda wainowana chii. So let's advocate for more funding for the Auditor General's office so that he does his work well. Thank you.
Good one.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I was happy with the contributions made by the submissions there. My name is Henry Canning from Disability Hub. There's one thing which I want us to really look at. We are now like they are used to it. They can do it when they want to do it, and they don't do it when they don't want to do it. Why do I want to say? We have been getting these reports for years. And if you notice, it was a trickle and trickle, and it's now a big drop. So it means they actually know that there's nothing which is going to happen to us, so we'll continue doing it. The corruption which I see in here has been happening. I was trying to read several years. I read almost about 5 reports down the line, and it has been happening the same way, and it was growing bigger and bigger. It started as a small thing, now it's a bigger. So my challenge now is to our policymakers. Guys, we need something to bite these people. It's because they actually know that even if we don't do it, if we do it, it's just going to come as a recommendation, and even if we don't implement it, it's got no problem with us. So it has started as a small thing, and now it's a big thing. Can we continue like this? Today it's me who's suffering from this. Tomorrow it might be your daughter. It might be your son. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Yeah.
All right, thank you, everyone. For me, I'm not suggesting that we become a communist country, but we have to look at what worked other countries that were where we are. For example, the Chinese government, they've managed corruption, but I think they've managed to do away with most of it, and now most of their local authorities are now working. So one thing that they did, I think in local authorities, they are not made of machines. They are people who run these local authorities. And we are all people. So we always weigh what we tend to gain and what we tend to lose. So I think maybe what they did was to put up mechanisms that make sure that those officials that run their authorities well, that do well, the communist nation, different from us, but then those that do well get promoted to higher levels, rewarding them for good work. And those that do not do good work are removed from the system. So I think we need another similar system. And also Singapore, another country that managed to do away with corruption. I think the major thing what they did was to make sure that their government officials are well paid because you are human beings. If you don't even have transport to get your way, you are now vulnerable to that corruption. So I think we need to pay our officials well, and also to incentivize those authorities that do well in managing their councils. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one. Yes, sir.
A very good morning. My name is Joe Bernard. I'm redirecting this to our honorable MPs. You are elected by the people to go and represent them in the parliament. I would like to give you a few suggestions. It's like if all tender processes under parliament oversight for a certain reason. The other thing, you must be given, sorry, I would like to come back again, giving the parliamentary committee on finances prosecuting powers to deal with the abuse of state funds. Suspension of all ministers with outstanding issues, especially on taking bribes. The other thing, banning of all companies cited from public tenders, especially that were in the Auditor General report, giving the Auditor General's office prosecuting authority. Then, lastly, please, let us be very harsh when dealing with corruption because it affects everyone. We all need to come together irregardlessly of our political affiliations, color, or creed. Let's come together and fight corruption. Thank you.
Thank you. We still one, or we let panelists respond. So there was a question related to urban councils and rural councils around that not publishing. Saying you are not publishing. Yes, local authorities are not publishing. So, what is the question?
I'm sorry. Mine is a contribution again to assist and green light before our panelists respond to questions. I want to assist my fellow brother. The parliamentarians or the committee is constituted of members of parliament who have different backgrounds. Some are from the media, some have been the matters of the law. According to our constitution, prosecution only lies with our courts. Same applies to the Auditor General's office. I'm sure the office is infested by accountants, auditors. So I appreciate that recommendation. But that's the reason, that's the principle of separation of powers is meant to allow the police to investigate and the courts to decide whether a crime is committed or not. And in that vein, I want to appreciate the government and our country leaders because the formation of Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission and having the courts, different types of the courts, from the commercial court, the criminal court, the civil court. This is a noble effort that secures the practice of justice in our country. Then again, paying officials who are dealing with corruption, I'm sure the government cannot corrupt officials so that they work in favor of the. I just propose that let the administration of justice be just. I thank you.
Thank you for your contribution. So we now give the panelists chance to respond to some of the issues raised.
Okay, thank you.
Can you project this?
Thank you, Mayor Protected. I want to respond to the first, my brother there, who said, in terms of giving feedback to the people, we try by all means to give feedback to the people through budget review meetings. We are mandated as councils to do budget review meetings. And in the local authority that I come from, we've already done our budget review, where we actually told people that in terms of devolution funds, we haven't received anything. And in terms of Zinara grant, we have received this much. So we do those meetings. I'm sure, I don't know of urban councils, but it is in the constitution, it is in the legal framework that we are supposed to do that. So we do those budget review meetings where we give, and also we do budget consultations where before we come up with a budget, we consult the stakeholders, we consult the residents. This is what we intend to be doing next year. Can you please bring in your issues? We always do that. Then that was the only issue. I just want to comment on the issue that was raised by the brother in green, whereby he said there's nothing that is being done in terms of there's no movement year in, year out. I come from a different school of thought where I've witnessed a big movement in terms of trying to address the Auditor General's recommendation. For example, this forum, it is my first time to sit in this forum, but I think it is actually a forum which endeavor to improve on the Auditor General recommendation. And also, if you look at the way Zach has been on us in terms of actioning the Auditor General recommendations, we report to Zach every year, and I'm sure there is a movement. The only time where it seems that there's no movement is when, for example, the time frame, the time at which the audit is being done. In most instances, many local authorities were behind with their audits. So you find that one local authority is being audited for 2 years in 1 year, or maybe for 3 years in 1 year if they manage to work that hard. So if you look at the recommendations for the first year, second year, they are there, they are still there in the same year. So they haven't been addressed, but it doesn't mean that they're not being addressed. They are being addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any burning issues before our panel takes their seats? Any burning issues?
Thank you. On the same issue of being in our closed space, I think I want to urge the different groups here represented to also say, please partake. In even local authorities, we also try to engage you. We call for meetings, people don't come. We put them on social media. We even advertise if it is the budget. We do monthly financial statements. We do management accounts quarterly. These are open to the public. And council meetings, when it is full council, public is allowed to come in and participate. You don't, of course, participate, but your presence means a lot. So those council meeting dates are also open to you. So I just want to encourage you to aid, to say, let us participate. Let us not wait for the Auditor General's report, because if you come in, your presence will even make certain things change, even the type of resolutions. And you're also allowed to ask, let's say, even after the meeting, to say that issue which you resolved, how will it be done, etc. So the space is very open for the public to come in, to participate even through their councillors. But it is just unfortunate that sometimes that space is not utilized or used. And also, council minutes are not always open for people to see and comment. But you have very few people who will come. Even the council budget, when it is finalized and approved, it is given to residents. They are allowed to buy a copy at a very nominal fee, but there are very few who know this and who will ask for it. And finally, because our parliamentarians are here, I just want to also say that local authorities are so have a lot of unfunded mandates, which make us sometimes fail to give that service delivered. If we look at our health, we are given to do the primary health. That is the running of our clinics. Pronunciations will be made. Free medication for 0 to 5 years. Free medication for maternity. Free medication for adults. But no one comes in and pays for this. All this will come to the local authority. It is we're in charge of providing primary schools. And now some of us have even gone to provide the secondary schools. And all these are unfunded mandates, which are upon the local authorities. Thank you.
Thank you for your contributions. I think people have exhausted their questions. We have one more. Thank you. Let's keep it short, 1 minute, so that we manage our time.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity. As residents, first I want to answer to what she has just said. As residents, we have been coming, we have been attending budget consultative meetings. Even ZIMCODD has been helping us to coordinate to attend these budget meetings. But what we say in those meetings is not what we get afterwards. So that's the situation that we are having as residents. Secondly, why aren't we pushing for devolution like what my colleague, Director Achille said? Right now, there is a lot of interference in local authorities to the extent that we are having investors who are saying they are coming from the ministry, from the central government, and pushing for 99 years leases in Chitumbisa. This is the situation that we are having as residents. And we are quiet and we are saying nothing. Last but not least, parliamentarians, we voted for you to go and represent us. We thought that by this time after the AG report, we're going to see you in our constituencies, telling an ordinary resident who can't attend a ZIMCODD meeting, what does the report say and how does it affect my residents? Chitrest, we are advocating for a forensic audit at Chitumbisa municipality. We have written to Parliament a petition, and we are waiting to hear from you to call us so that we can tell you why we need a forensic audit urgently in Chitumbisa. I thank you.
Thank you so much for being brief and to the point. Thank you.
I think mine is more of a information. I think I mentioned the issue to do with information dissemination when it comes to participation. Like where I come from, from Italy, you notice that Italy has a born feather beyond to work with civil society resident association. They even have what they call budget committee, which comprises of different civil society. So it becomes so easy each time when they call residents to come and participate in those budget consultation. However, you notice that other local authorities, there are always these gatekeepers within those local authorities. They don't want to come forth and work with civil society association, which is something that we are supposed to actually move forward and try to ensure that how best can we work together with those civil society organizations because they represent the bulk of the people within those communities.
Thank you, Sam. Maybe giving you opportunity.
I think for me, the issue of this is addressed to our local authorities and the RRTC, that when you are saying that documents are available, people can participate, let's also think accessibility, because not everyone is able to will themselves to come and see and to participate. Are these available online, making documents and reports available online, making them accessible, the use of sign language, oral, and other, formats that will make sure that everyone participates. Not everyone can come to council. Not everyone can come to offices. So when we are thinking about inclusion, we also need to take care of those that may not be able to come through and access and participate. Are there other ways in which they can participate in these review meetings, in these consultations? Thank you.
Any other contribution before we allow them to respond and close the panel? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I will respond on the last contributor. That is true. Maybe our inclusivity is limited. We note that, and we will try to include But you were also covering space on disability. We, as local authorities in urban, we are encouraging each other to have disability committees. We actually have, because you will notice that in our local authorities, we do have councillors who actually represent the disability space. So, of course, maybe funding is another issue, but we are trying and we will keep improving, like you are saying. As for the civil society inclusivity, yes, we do have budget committees, but you still find that that budget committee, they will still come alone, or we even try to say, okay, we are never going to 10, we are never going to 10. But I'm saying these are your issues. Why should we be encouraging people, even if you create it online, like they say? Of course, I've seen budget participation online, but you'll find that when you have put it online, it is only maybe 10 or 20% who will really contribute to the budget. Maybe the rest, I accept that maybe it's also that people are angry with this, the type of service. The rest will be telling you off for which does not help what you are trying to do. And our other challenges, local authorities, when it comes to budget, we come to consult at Tiskuram. But sometimes our other service providers, we have ZESA, it does not consult. We have Net1, it does not consult. Domestic yacho yakakwira masuwa kuya zvakambokwira, saka we then fail to provide zvoitafanike local authorities zvisi correct, but inyaya yekuti hatisi kunyatsofambirana nemamwe magavhmendi.
Matripa ari kuenda every week, every month, panenge ingori up and down.
Maybe just to round up, in terms of following up on devolution funds, we do make follow-ups on devolution funds. We do write to the ministry, and they return to us the onward submissions to the Ministry of Finance, but nothing comes. So there's an effort that is actually being done in terms of following up for these grants, but there's nothing that is being done, and we actually give feedback to the people. And in terms of publishing the statutes, like the documents, we will try to do that in terms of the Rural District Councils Act. It is unfortunate that we are working with the statute that has been drafted maybe around 1987. And if you try to move around the statute, and when the law catches up with you, like I said, we operate in a hazy operating environment where we do not know at times whether we're supposed to go with the flow or we're supposed to go with the act. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, my distinguished panelists. You can now take your seats. Thank you for wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So now I'm calling upon Honorable Mateo, who is standing in for the chair of the Public Accounts Committee, to share with us their response, reactions to these audit findings, and their plans around this report. So, Honorable Mateo, thank you.
Thank you all, and we are very happy to be here to have this conversation about the Auditor General's report. We have members of the Public Accounts Committee who are in here. I'm just standing in for the chairperson, Honorable Wende, who could not be with us today as he has other prior commitments. We are hearing you. We are hearing how upset the people are, how upset the citizens are because of the Auditor General's report. I'll start with local authorities. So the Auditor General, like they mentioned, they audited about 96 local authorities, with only 2 having clean opinions. By clean opinion, it means there were no material misstatements in that audit. And these 2 were Goromonzi Rural Council and Marondera Rural Council. So they are the only 2 ones that had an unmodified opinion. Now, we had about 58 with adverse opinions, 7 with a disclaimer of opinion, and 29 with qualified accounts. Now, I was listening attentively to UCAS and those who represent the rural local councils. The main thing, I think the main point there, where the local authorities are failing, is they are not adhering to IPSAS, which is the international, in terms of public sector accounting standards. They are not adhering to that on 2 points. So there's IPSAS 4, which is basically the effect of exchange rate in the effect of the exchange rate when reporting their accounts. Number 2 was IPSAS 9, which is basically the revenue from transactions in terms of, because of the volatility that was happening to the Zimbabwean dollar. So they were not clearly reporting in terms of what IPSAS really likes. But we are very concerned as Parliament, as the Public Accounts Committee, that only 2 can have 2 opinions, clean opinions. So which means that it's doable. I hate the excuse that it's very difficult for us, but if some are actually having clean opinions, then surely we expect our local authorities to have those clean opinions. And obviously, the late submission of financial statements is quite serious, because these people get funds from the government, and in fact, they also do get these devolution funds. In terms of the devolution funds, the excuse that someone comes from the ministry and says, you know, we have been seconded to provide this and that. The Constitution is very clear in terms of devolution. Section 264 of the Constitution, I think it's subsection 2, which states that the powers are devolved to the people in local authorities. The people, meaning that when you receive devolution funds at the council, you are then supposed to call in people, your residents, to say that we have received such, and we do know that the Ministry of Finance, sometimes they don't give you the full amount that you are supposed to be appropriated, because it's supposed to be 5% of the consolidated revenue fund goes to the local devolution. But we know that the Ministry of Finance sometimes only gives 2% or 1% of the money that they've been appropriated by Parliament. But still, you are supposed to call the people to say, we have received X amount of money. What are the priorities of the people to use that money? So in terms of local authorities, that's where the major problem is in terms of the Auditor General's report. I think they were the worst performing and supported adjustments. So, for example, you want to buy something, right? And you had budgeted for 94 million. And by the time you go to buy, that product is now costing 200 million. So there's been a difference now of 100 million. But then what normally happens is that those adjustments were not being reported. So there is potential for corruption. So if I'm going to write here that I have budgeted 95 million for such expenditure, then I go on to buy for 200 million, but do not report. So this is where again the Auditor General was saying that you were not reporting your adjustments. There was no supporting evidence that you actually adjusted. And of course, weak internal controls. Yes, I do know that a lot of times something has to be signed by 2 people. But again, the Auditor General noted that there were basically very weak internal controls in most of our local authorities, which means that it was very easy for someone to misuse those funds from the council, because there were no stringent policies that guided how money can actually leave a local authority. For example, and then sometimes it's just, I'll take Kadoma, for example. So in Kadoma, there was 22,500 US dollars that was budgeted to change a pickup truck to an ambulance. 22,500. So the money that they budgeted for, and then they then released 13,500 without following the procurement procedures. This was released to whoever that person who they identified to be to be converting a pickup truck to an ambulance. And by the time the general visited what you call it, Kadoma, that adjustment or that ambulance was nowhere to be found, which means there was no conversion that had taken place, yet that money had already been given to the company. Then I go to parastatals. So parastatals are basically government entities. They are about 191 entities of government that were given that were audited, of which 57 of them had a clean opinion, or they had an unmodified or an unqualified opinion, of which 11 of those had a disclaimer. When we say disclaimer of opinion, a disclaimer means that there is not even evidence for the Auditor General to make a conclusion or to make a finding. So it means that, for example, if I go to this entity and I ask for the documents of the expenditure, I'm given next to nothing in terms of reporting that expenditure. So these are quite serious. For example, there was the National Handling Services, those who do the baggage at the airports. They have a subsidiary in Namibia, and basically they just didn't submit all the financials from Namibia. So the Auditor General could not actually make a finding to see what went wrong, what happened. So it was a disclaimer of opinion. Then we go to Wiza Central Hospital. The Central Hospital received a disclaimer because their accounting system malfunctioned and all their documents were lost. They had no backup of their accounting. So the Auditor General was unable to actually carry out a proper audit because they could not provide anything. They could not provide documentation. They could not try to find that person. They could not allocate them. So in the end, they had a disclaimer of opinion. Then again, Lupani State University. Lupani State University could not provide supporting documents for the fees that was paid by students. Because you would think that when you go to pay your school fees, you've got your receipts, and then everything is being recorded in a ledger. But actually, at the university, they could not provide that. To support that, students had actually paid fees and the amounts. And they could not also provide a listing of students who wrote their exams, whether they paid for those exams or they were exempted. They could not provide that evidence. So in all, they had a disclaimer of opinion. And they also paid, at the time, 22.6 million Zimbabwean dollars for the supply of heifers. These are very nice cows, but nothing was delivered at the time of the audit. Nothing was delivered. So I will go on and on. I'll just go touch one on appropriation accounts. Now I'll come to what the parliament can do in such circumstances. For example, there was lack of consolidation in the Ministry of Youth in terms of their outposts. So basically, 25 out of the 48 what you call them, the stations, sorry, the schools that they in the Ministry of Youth, vocational training centers. So 25 out of 48 vocational training centers could not actually submit their financials, which heavily affected the Ministry of Youth. Hence, they were given a disclaimer of opinion by the Auditor General. And they could also not account for the biological assets. By biological assets, I mean the goats and so forth. They could not account for all those things. So then comes the question, what can Parliament do? So Section 309 of the Constitution mandates the Auditor General to carry out an audit on behalf of the government. Then Section 117 and Section 119 of the Constitution gives Parliament the power basically to oversee all government agencies and entities. Then Section 299 is where the Public Accounts Committee comes in. Section 299 then gives Parliament the power to oversee expenditure and revenue by government and its agencies. So the Public Finance Management Act then gives that authority of Parliament, that authority to the Public Accounts Committee. So what we then do at the Public Accounts Committee is we call in these government entities. And as you can imagine, the total number of audited entities are 367. So it's basically impossible for us to call every single entity that has been audited by the Auditor General. But what we do then is we look at the three reports: the parastatal one, the local government, and the appropriation or the ministries, or those who are given money directly by the Consolidated Revenue Fund. We look at who are the most, who are the worst performers. Then we call them to Parliament for an inquiry. When we call them to Parliament for an inquiry, we want to ascertain what went wrong. Why did they get that opinion from the Auditor General? Once we do that, we then create a report. We create a report which we submit to Parliament. So the Public Accounts write a report and we submit it to what? To Parliament. And the Parliament will then debate upon that and pass that report. It is then left to the government agencies, the law enforcement agencies, to determine whether a crime has been committed, so that they can then take action, whether it be that the National Prosecuting Authority, the police, on the report of the Public Accounts Committee to say this has been, the law is broken. It is not the job of members of Parliament to arrest people, but it is the job of the law enforcement agencies to do that. Our job is to bring accountability. We bring them to account by revealing what and actually investigating what went wrong in that government entity. That it is up to them. But we can also make recommendations. For example, we can make a recommendation that all those local authorities who have a disclaimer of opinion or an adverse opinion must not receive devolution funds. We can also make a recommendation that their budget must not be improved. Or those who are still lacking, those who still have not submitted their accounts. But if you look at the general report, there are a lot of entities that are still backwards in terms of submitting their financial statements for auditing. So, for example, ZBC, the latest audited accounts are for 2020. So there's no 2021, there's no 2022, there's no 2023. Someone is asking me, so have you now find out what happened? It's at DEC. The current scandals on social media, what happened to DEC? He says no, because the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission was audited up to 2022. So all what happened in 2023, we still have not received that report because they were backward in terms of their financials. So that will probably come out next year when they have been audited for 2023. So our job as parliament is basically codified in the constitution, and we are doing our job. We are bringing these people to account. PAC sits on a Monday and on a Friday. So we sit Monday and Friday calling in the public funds that were dispensed to them, and we are doing it. Someone then once said to me, what are you doing in Kariba? What are you doing in Kariba? Wasting taxpayers' money. But I tell you what, when that report comes, we have to spend maybe 4 days thoroughly, meticulously, with a fine tooth comb going through every single account, and then come up with a conclusive report. We can't do that while Parliament is sitting. We have to go somewhere, lock ourselves, and do the work, so that we can then stipulate who to bring to Parliament. Because people who bring to Parliament are coming for oral evidence. They are coming for a hearing. So we'll be firing questions. I'm sure all the media who come there will know we'll be firing questions to them in terms of the report and in terms of our own research as well. So this is what we do as a Public Accounts Committee, and I want to give other honorable members who would like to add something to do so as well. I see Honorable Mchodi. I'll start with Honorable Mchodi. Want to add something? He's also a member of the Public Accounts Committee.
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief since we are running out of time. So on Parliament, we also have a committee on justice, legal, and parliamentary affairs, and it is very much seized with the matters that arise. We are associated with the public accounts. So we will, following this awareness and this presentation, also seek to review the Urban Councils Act and the Rural Councils Act. So how do we do that? We work with the Law Development Commission and the public, the Parliamentary Legal Committee, so that we can review these laws to instill accountability, transparency, and also to correct the urgency problem that has been issued here. So we also urge stakeholders like you, or like yourselves, to approach the Parliament through the Speaker's office to present petitions on the review of certain legislation that we think may improve transparency and accountability. And this may even include issues where a disclaimer of opinion is issued, and also issues to do with how you can handle the urgent problem. For instance, you can recommend in a petition that once a disclaimer of opinion is issued by the Auditor General's office, it means that the CEO of that particular institution in this whole executive must be censored or must be fired automatically from their positions, and that can actually improve the performance of the state enterprises. So I've talked of the inquiry. We can also make an inquiry. We can also recommend the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission to intervene in the National Prosecuting Authority, where the international public sector accounting standards have been broken and the disclaimer has been issued. But of course, there are arising questions that arise that how compatible are these IP SAS with the local business environment? We've seen that in some cases, the international public sector accounting standards are not compatible with our environment, especially hyper-information environment. And how accurate, how reliable, and credible is the evidence generated, and in terms of its admissibility, for litigation purposes? You find that there's a gentleman there who said the accounting general must be given arresting powers or prosecution powers, but we see that the evidence may not be credible and may not be admissible for litigation purposes. And also how timeless is the Auditor General's report. You find that most of cases at law, we say it's a brutal format. Most of the reports are presented maybe 5 years. You are presenting a report for 2021 and you are in 2024. It means that all what has happened is now being overtaken by events, because certain statutory instruments would have been generated, which then override the previous transactions and standards. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mtodi. Honorable Mtodi is the chairperson, is the parliamentary chairperson for the Justice Legal Committee. So I think you have heard that they are also looking into these issues so that those who we think have actually gone beyond the law must take its course. Is there anyone else who wants to add? Okay, I'll give you 2 minutes, honorable member.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman. I just want to appreciate first the organizers for this event because it also gives us some light, and it's an engaging where, as members of the public and your members of parliament, we engage to deliberate on such issues of national importance. I think it was highlighted that the civil society also feel that you also need to embrace the developments that is currently happening in our country and shift and change focus, especially on devolution. First, let's appreciate the coming in of devolution, but let's also analyze that were the targets met and what were the challenges, so that the civil society can inform government on how to improve next time without rather fighting and making noise, but with no objective role. Then the issue of inclusivity, there have been public hearings all over. They are published in the newspapers and they're published online. And I'm sure some of the people, if you can't ukasaida kumusangano unomirirwa nevariko, because we can't be at the same place at the same time, all of us. So to those who are not havasi kusvikirwa kune nzvimbo dzavo, unogona kutumira zvichemo zvako kune vari kuenda. Then on the issue of inclusivity of people with disabilities, I want to applaud my party, ZANU-PF, because it is the only party in a secretary for disability, from the political up to the cell level. So that alone, it shows that the party is concerned and the political. No, let me finish.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm finishing the acting chairman. I know pachishona vanoti kana ukanzirisa mombe. Okay, sorry, chairman. My last contribution is as parliament we have two roles, that is mainly oversight. There is someone ataura kuti tinge tichitonga nekuunza vanhu for prosecution. I think we can recommend according to our national constitution, which represented us all. Then the other job is we oversee the government programs and developments that is taking place in our constituencies. And we are doing so well as this parliament than any other.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Thank you. Let's give now another Honorable.
Chef, even a microphone, Chef, but it's not a Chef.
Thank you very much. Honorable Katema.
Acting Chef.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the important platform. I just want to make one point. Public Accounts Committee is a post-audit committee, which means that we are limited in what we can do before the auditor's report comes out. But I think much of what we are finding expression in the auditor's report is also a result of corruption. We can't run away from that. So really I'm making almost a personal appeal, but also a collective appeal for your support as civil society as we try to deal with issues of corruption. Last week, I raised the point of national interest on the need for a whistleblowers legislation. We don't have a standalone whistleblower legislation that can protect people who whistleblow, people who are like in public service or even in private service, who are witnessing corruption while it's taking place, and they want to whistleblow, and then they know the danger of doing that without protection. So this is something that I think we need to push so that we have a standalone whistleblowers protection legislation. In 2022, there were efforts. I think ZIMCODD was also involved in the push for that legislation. 2022-2023, there were efforts, and I think the fundamentals of the bill were actually drafted, and then it was abandoned. So I think this week again, on Wednesday, I'll be able to ask the minister if they're going to take that up If not, we might need to have a private member's bill, or at least a bill that is sponsored by civil society, so that we can use the Laws Protection Act to just curb corruption. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Is there anyone else before we go to? Just to say again, Parliament is also amending the Public Finance Management Act. And one of the clauses that I'm going to advocate for is that when a disclaimer of opinion is issued on an entity, be it a local authority or a parastatal or even a ministry, it means the accounting officer at the time of the issuance of that disclaimer must be immediately suspended pending investigation. So an accounting officer is the highest ranking manager. So if it's in the local authorities, it's the CEO or the town clerk. In parastatals, it will probably be the CEO or the Director General. Then in ministries, it's the Permanent Secretary. So they must be immediately suspended upon the production of the report pending investigation, because the disclaimer is the worst that you can get in accounting terms. Honorable Kangausan.
Thank you very much, Acting Chair. Thank you. I believe our role as Parliament and public accounts is that we need to be running oversight of government expenditures, oversight of the public spending, also hearing evidence of whatever is happening. And what I've noticed in the public accounts committee where I am is that there are certain things that we need to look at. I think maybe we need to have teeth as public accounts so that we can be able, for people that are running in this, whether be it local authority, to be afraid until we started saying, no, when we are doing our hearing, oral hearings, we need to have the ZAC to come there, the media to come there in order to name and shame. But also we need to look at the local authority. There are a number of things, sorry, can I stand? There are a number of things that are there that we need to look at for us to have a local authority that is functional. Because if we are looking at the remuneration that we give to the local authorities for the councils, it's next to nothing, less than $15. And how do you expect that person to execute their duties effectively, efficiently, to the betterment of our people? So we need to look at how we remunerate those people. If we're not going to remunerate them, we are going to find ourselves in a situation where they're going to be corrupt, where they're going to start doing things that are outside so that they can sustain their families. So we need also to have incentives in order to retain even the staff turnover for those local authorities. When we look there, they are not substantive CEOs. Then, because they have been arrested, then they have been acting CEO. The acting CEO is not substantive, is just functioning there as just a person that's just standing in. As a result, we are shortchanged. So my recommendation or my contribution is that all those that are acting, majority of those local authorities are acting in the capacity of acting. They must be substantial within a reasonable time. When someone is suspended or removed from the office, within 6 months, they must be replaced. There must be a contingent plan to make sure that if someone is suspended within a reasonable time, that person must be replaced so that we can have value for money on those that are running our local authority, even our parastatals, so that we can have a better Zimbabwe. And I really would be very thankful that even now the Second Republic are this transparent. His Excellency, President.
Just a minute, Honorable Member, be on time.
Okay, give me 1 minute. Don't do me that guy. Let me finish. I know I'm from his party. Yes, let me just finish 1 minute. Okay? You do not tell me, Mr. Chairman, how many minutes, because I'm a preacher. So, right, let me finish this. I'm not being political. I thank God for His Excellency for the Second Republic for such a transparent. That's why we will all be able to speak our minds and to be able to examine and to be transparent. It has never been happened, but in the Second Republic, this is happening. I thank God for His excellence, for such a wonderful atmosphere that He created for us all. Thank you.
Thank you. I thank God for the citizens of this country.
Yes.
So thank you very much. This is from us from Papa. I'm sure you can now have a feeling of what happens when we are discussing these issues sometimes. But you know, the good of the diversity is always good. So thank you very much. That was our presentation from Parliament. Thank you so much, Vice Chair. Thank you for those insightful recommendations. So because of time, we are done with our program. So now I'm calling upon Bismarck Mutizwa just for 5 minutes, just to share with us a plan to share with our parliamentarians before we have the closing remarks. So Bismarck, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Shikombore. Thank you, presenters and everyone. Unfortunately, I did not manage to capture and finish all the plans and action plans that we're developing. But what I would want to do, because of time, I would like to ask Honorable Tony. He raised an issue in which he was talking about the audit being done maybe 3, 4, 5 years later. So I want to know what his committee is going to do pertaining that issue, so that we'll be able to follow up with him. And we wanted to write down, maybe if you can give us, maybe even with specific timelines in how we are going to do it.
No, it's not. Thank you very much. It's not our role as Parliament to prescribe how accounts can be done. That is the role of the executive. So I'm sure the separation of powers, it should be a policy. Say the Auditor General's report must be for the current year, to send it to Parliament for the current year. But I'm sure because of the backlog and so on, that is not happening. But it's not really the prerogative of Parliament. But what I say also, in addition to what you are saying, is that stakeholders or interested parties can petition Parliament to say if a disclaimer of opinion has been issued, what then should be the legal process that should be followed, such as the suspension of the CEO and his executive in their entirety. Why this investigation, like what Honorable Mateo suggested. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Tony. I think we a gentleman from CRA. For CRA, I put it under local authorities, because wanted to come up with an action plan that deals with that, the challenges that they're encountering. So we don't want the action plan to be something that is done or crafted by ZIMCODD alone. So wanted to know what you want to be included in the action plan, and what is it that can be done, the steps, and possibly by when you want that to be achieved.
That's an ambush. But I think what is important from also what I got from the Honorable Mtodi and others, you realize that there's also some committees. Honorable Mtodi comes from a committee of legal and parliamentary affairs, which I think we really need to then produce a draft view on devolution. I think we can also be able to contribute towards that. So a draft a view on devolution. Remember, the Minister of Local Government was supposed to present those views, but until now we don't have such. So we can then co-create these views so that then we can be able to inform at the devolution. Probably we envisage as residents, as people of Zimbabwe. I think it's something else which we can be able to do. But also, I think what also when I was having a conversation with parliamentarians, I also have a view that also I think there's that need also to capacitate parliamentarians on devolution. I think this is very, very important. And also probably where devolution has been implemented, what are lessons learned from there? I think it's also very, very important. So that at the end of the day, when they debate, they can also be debating at an informed point of view. And then I think the government yesterday they've issued an intergovernmental fiscal transfer manual, which will deal with the 5%. I think it's also something which we can be able to start to engage with parliamentarians to say how we then
this can it be able to be implemented vis-a-vis our local authorities. I think that's what I can say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there other stakeholders that are interested in contributing in the co-creation of this bill? Okay. Anyone else? Organization. Or ZIMCODD. Okay, it's fine. So, taught by when?
I think let's put October.
October 2024. Okay, so by October 2024. Thank you. Then we'd also, I also written something down in regards to the challenges that we're encountering in the public procurement, right? I don't know if Honorable Mtoli and the Public Accounts Committee, if there is something within your committees. We wanted, maybe we are going to send the question in writing. Maybe we can have someone within your committee that will also say, I'll move the motion by when. So we wanted to know if it is possible for someone to raise maybe a person finding out or tracking down the vehicles that were purchased but that have not yet been delivered, or the other challenges that we are encountering in the procurement within the public sector. So it's possible. It's okay. So we'll send maybe by the end of the day something to you in return. Then we can agree by when we can do that. Then for UCAS, you did not raise your hand, but I think we might need also your input in the of the auditor general of the draft of the devolution bill. Is there anyone who have a specific issue that he or she wants to be included in our action plan?
Yes, like I said, you need to tell us as stakeholders when you can petition the parliament about what can be done where a disclaimer of opinion has been issued or where an adverse report has been issued. Because if you don't address those issues, it means that there will be corruption with impunity. People just do it and they know that nothing is going to happen. So you need to have that petition to the Justice Committee, then we take it up in Parliament. That is my recommendation. Thank you.
It's all right. Thank you. I think Honorable Mtoni, for that one, you can also follow up with ZIMCODD. We commit to do that. Thank you very much. So, okay. Yes, Honorable. We are all honorables today.
Thank you. I think doing the audit and also maybe the material effects that are being mentioned by the auditor before maybe petitioning. I'm not trying to protect a disclaimer, but I'm also trying to make the House see that there are many issues surrounding being issued with a disclaimer. It may be that maybe the people that the audit understanding the operating environment.
All right, sorry, my sister. Thank you very much. The honorable, they are now saying time. So I think is it okay if I can put it down with you, then we can share with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Bismarck. So right now I call upon Mr. Tatienda Mumberara to give us closing remarks. It's our Northern ZIMCODD Northern region chair.
Thank you, Shiko. Greetings, colleagues. I recognize honorable members. I recognize members from the civil society, from the academia, stagers, and everybody present this morning. I'll be very brief in giving these closing remarks. As I was coming here from Shtumbiza in a combi, I overheard a conversation between two young people. They were discussing about Kenya and what is happening there.
So one young man was saying, those youths in Kenya, they are doing nonsense because they do not have things to do. Here in Zimbabwe, you don't have time for that because we are asking for a living. One thing which struck me from the response of the other was the ability to connect policies and decisions in public affairs with the lived realities of being able to hustle or not. So I say President Ruto would want young people like this boy who thinks there is no connection between a policy or a bill which is passed in parliament, a finance bill that restricts access to resources to young people. So what we are doing here is something which is of paramount importance, which can stand between agitated young people destroying our beloved country and discussions which makes the difference. So we are all in here because we are concerned. We want something better for our country. So in our diversity from policymakers, civil society, activists, academia, we are coming together around the issue of public finance management. And the Auditor General's report has historically revealed issues which demand a collective approach to plugging the gaps and ensure that our institutions and our public service delivery system is top-notch. So I will not speak much into that because our experts had already done that, but just put in a brief context right at the banner here. At ZIMCODD, we believe strong institutions are necessary and are very important for service delivery and for competence. We also recognize that 70% of the Africa's population are young people. So whatever policy decision, whatever decisions that are made in development contexts, which do not put or place young people at the center, are suicidal. Young people are the energy, they are the driving force if we are going to push for institutions that are responsive to developmental discourse. So that is what the SIA context is all about. I thought I should speak to that. Then secondly, I would want to appreciate you on behalf of ZIMCODD to thank the Parliamentary Portfolio Committees present, public accounts, and other honorable members here, that we do not take lightly your commitment to always come to these platforms and discuss. We really applaud that and we always look forward to future engagements. We would want to thank our local authority bodies who are with us here sharing insights. It is from that diversity that we can come up with a fuller appreciation of what needs to be done. I would want also to thank members of the civil society here, members from the academia, and the social and economic justice activists from ZIMCODD who have made this program a success. And behind the scene, the secretariat team, which is working tirelessly that we have programs of this nature ongoing. So just to say thank you to all of you, let us continue engaging on programs like this and also online so that together we can foster development, together we can have richer conversations in Zimbabwe that takes us forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members, we've come to the end of our breakfast meeting. Thank you so much. So, maybe one last announcement. You can see Bismarck, I was going to do the logistics. You can start with parliamentarians who are rushing to. Okay, so yeah. So the rest can continue sitting so that we'll see you after the parliamentarians. Thank you so much. Yeah, and of course, thank you, our online viewers. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you so much.